first things first, tell me, if you had to describe Monk in a phrase, what would that be?
Monk is a guy trying to be free intellectually, creatively, and coming up against, one challenge after another that's trying to prevent that. Challenges on a professional level, on a personal level, from his family, and he's doing the best he can.
Yeah, and speaking of challenges, there's a line that's delivered by Monk's mother where she says, "Geniuses are lonely because they cannot connect with the rest of us." Would you say this rings true for Monk specifically?
I think he's certainly, he's self-isolating. His family has gone through a lot of sudden trauma. I think that weighs on his emotional life. He's also an individual who's not really interested in kind of creative or intellectual conformity. He has his voice, he has his interests, and that's what he wants to pursue and express. Why not? So in that, these are elements of who he is. I think for a variety of reasons, he's kind of self-isolating, has difficulty connecting, and could be, I don't know. He's a pretty self-conscious guy as well. So I don't think he necessarily thinks of himself as, he might. He's a pretty smart guy. But yes, it's a poignant moment when Leslie delivers that. Leslie Uggams, the one and only who plays my mother, when she delivers that realization or that observation to him.
Yeah, and then, Monk wrote this book kind of as a joke, if you will. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the book pulled a fast one on him and helped him change his perspective on his own life?
Right, no, that's a great question, because he creates this character out of spite, a pseudonym that he writes this book under in response to a book written by Issa Rae's character named Centaura Golden, a book that Monk thinks is beneath him and pandering to the masses, and so out of frustration he writes his own, what he thinks is his own version of that book, and it ends up becoming a huge success. Meanwhile, his family is disintegrating, and he needs that success in order to take care of his mother, and he finds himself now being consumed by this character that he's created. So that is that's the downhill portion of his journey. And where he finds himself, well, you have to come to the film and see. But at the end of the day, there are realizations that he makes. But what I think is wonderful about our film is that it allows for interpretation. And I think people will come to this film and find parts of themselves, perhaps in Monk's journey, but certainly will find parts of themselves, no matter what background they come from, in the story of this family and his relationship to it and their relationship to one another. So I don't want to answer questions for people. I want people to come and enjoy the film and either answer the questions for themselves, or maybe just ask better questions or more interesting questions once the film is done.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, Jeffrey, and congratulations on a phenomenal film.
Thank you very much.
So first things first, can you talk to me, if you had to describe Cliff in a phrase, what would that be?
In a phrase, Cliff is coloring outside of the lines. That's, I think, for someone for the majority of their life felt they had to play things in a very particular way by societal rules or whatnot. He's finally reached a place in his life where societal rules no longer work for him because they are contrary to his authentic truth. And so until he finds what his new equilibrium is, he has to sort of be a little messy before he can find what neatness looks like now.
cool. I like that.
Thank you very much.
I like that.
I appreciate it.
And like personally, what would you say Cliff has taught you or will teach others about the freedom that comes with living in their truth?
I mean, I think as an artist, right, for me, and sort of like being the only artist in my family, or one of a few, people tend to look at you as like, you're strange, right? So I have an empathy of sort of being a black sheep in a way. Cliff's is different than mine because he's gay, but like wanting to find acceptance within your tribe and believing that your tribe is supposed to be your family is something that I think that I can relate to unequivocally. So two things happen. You go out and sort of cultivate your own tribe and recognize that family can take on a larger definition sometimes. And then the other part of it is like once you authentically accept yourself for who you are and feel no compunction about trying to be anything else for anybody else, that kind of gives them permission to accept you too. So self-acceptance has to happen first before other people can join it.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love that you mentioned family because this film is very much rooted in family.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why it is important for your character, along with his siblings, to mirror us people who have siblings who grew up in the same households but had very different experiences?
Because that's the way it is. I got two boys right now, and they have the same genes, and like they are about as different as oil and water. And they still find a way to love each other through it, but it's not always harmonious. You know, these siblings don't always get along like hand and glove, but there is a tie that binds, and it brings them back to each other. Whether it's a love for another sibling, whether it's just that's their home, and that's what's familiar to them. There's a certain level of discomfort that you have to get comfortable with in order to be with family, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's worth it, right? Everybody makes their own sort of choices or whatnot, but you would like to think that those folks are going to hold you down, even when you are at your messiest or your least polished. And I love that in this film, these two brothers are able to find their way back into each other's lives.
I love that. And thank you so much for your time and congratulations on an amazing film.
Thank you very much, Shanique. I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. So first things first, describe Coraline in a phrase and the role that she kind of plays in Monk's life.
Well, Coraline is, in American fiction, the love interest to Jeffrey Wright's Monk character. She's a lawyer who's just gone through a divorce. She's a public defender. She understands that she defends people who may be guilty, but she's made her peace with that. She sees herself and her life as something that's, being reshaped a little bit, but she's also knows who she is. So it's a very mature woman who's looking for a mature relationship.
Yeah, and one of the American fiction has many themes, but one key one that stuck out to me is freedom. What would you say Coraline teaches Monk about the freedom and just living in your truth and knowing what you want out of life?
I think that she's free because she's entertaining the fact that this could possibly be something. And again, after divorce, it's not the easiest thing to do, but she's willing to risk some of that with him because she likes his books. She thought his books weren't impressing anybody, but impressed her. She read those books before she met him. And so I think that the idea that you say freedom, that Black people say freedom, and we understand it in a different, very meaningful way, that we're not just talking about independence, we're talking about the idea to be free of this, the things that society put on us, and how difficult that is, because every day you're reminded that you're Black in some way. And whether it's on social media or whether it's with things that you think you could have gotten if you didn't have the shade or tone. As a woman, you might think the same thing. If I had a penis, if I only had a penis, I'd be free to do this. But not every day that you get those opportunities. And I think that Coraline comes a little bit more whole than Monk is right now.
Yeah, and then just lastly here, this is also a film that's very much rooted in family. What did this, being a part of this cast, teach you just about the complexities of being in a dysfunctional family, if you will?
Well, I don't think there's a person in America that's not in some kind of dysfunctional thing. And America is its own dysfunctional family. It's the beauty part, that you come here and we say out of many one. But how much are we getting along with our family? You know, do we see other people and have empathy? Can they have empathy in us and not see us as villains because we've been played that way, or stereotypes? I used to think of the Asian community that they all could do Kung Fu. I'm not even kidding you, because, you know, I looked through the eyes of Bruce Lee, and in a way I was impressed with that, but that wasn't who they all are. And we've got to ask ourselves as we make up, you know, this great, experiment, how limiting our connection is with each other. And let's expand it, and let's make sure that it's organic and it's feeding and nurturing each other. And that's hard. By the way, their dysfunctional family is full of all sorts of beautiful functional things. You can see the different skin colors in there, Sterling's compared to Jeffrey's. You can see that they were all accomplished in some way, that the parents had got them there, but they also hiding some real hard traumas and still trying to function. So that was functional, that they were trying to move past those traumas without any guidance. That's so many of us. So even though they were dysfunctional, they are very functional and very ordinary American family.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Erika, and thanks for a beautiful job in a beautiful film.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Shanique.
And so first things first, could you tell me, if you had to describe American fiction in a phrase, what would that be?
I would say that American fiction is about freedom. It's about people's desire to be themselves and to live their lives how they want to live their lives and do their work how they want to do their work, and sort of the restrictions that people place on that freedom from time to time, and sort of like what those restrictions on people's freedom does to them in their lives. I would say that encapsulates a lot of the themes of the film.
Yeah, and one thing in particular, as much as this film is about some of those nuances of being Black in America, if you will, it's also one that is very much about the complexities of the family that you are born into. Why was it important to touch on a topic like that?
Oh, because I think that, I think that for me, there is such a limited perspective on what Black life looks like in America. I think that there are very rigid restrictions about what Black stories are allowed to be told and what Black characters look like in film and television. And so to me, having a real breadth of experience within this family was important to me, sort of like showing that these people who are even raised under one roof, by the same parents, can have such different experience and be vastly different human beings. I think that is important to me, showing sort of like the nuances and the complexities and sort of the different challenges and the different desires and hopes and dreams within this same family, all of whom are Black people. That was important to me. And so I think it's sort of a reminder that, Black people's lives are as complex and nuanced and deep and broad as everybody else's lives, and that our experiences are just as varied as everybody else's experiences. I think that's something that gets lost in the shuffle from time to time when people make film and television about Black life, and it's something that I really wanted to put at the forefront of the film.
Yeah, and then just lastly, there's one line in the film that I love from Monk's mother where she says, "Geniuses are lonely because they cannot connect with the rest of us." In the end, what would you say ultimately helps Monk to achieve this?
I think that Monk realizes, and I don't want to give away the very ending of the movie, but at the very ending of the movie, hopefully you know what I'm talking about, there's this sort of, I think this revelation that Monk has had some growth in realizing that he is no longer, I think Monk no longer sees himself as being superior to the people around him. I think the Monk at the beginning of the movie is this very arrogant guy. He's this very frustrated man. He's this man who thinks that, who sort of snipes at other artists around him because he believes those other artists are doing work that is sort of lower than his and sort of like more base than his. And I think that over the course of the film, Monk realizes how this sort of like self-alienation he's caused has really hurt his life and really sort of like hurt him. And sort of that I think that Monk's journey is one finding himself, Monk's journey is finding his way back to human beings, back to his family, back to romantic partners, back to just other human beings in a way that he's isolated himself. This is a guy who I think is frustrated for many reasons. And one of the reasons is because he's lonely, because he feels that he is without any support in this world. But I think Monk by the end realizes that one of the reasons he's lonely is because he's forced himself to be lonely, because he's been so arrogant and been so isolating. And so I think that, to me, that's one of the stories, is this guy learning to sort of take away this facade that he's built around himself and sort of open himself up to the world in a way that lets other people in, and sort of like lets himself accept love. And that to me is always, I think that kind of like that tenderness that Monk gets by the end is something that I think is important for people to see.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, Cord, and congratulations on an amazing film.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.